Hi, everyone. Let's see, it is Sunday, March 29th of 2020. As always, we'll just wait for everyone to join us and find the live stream this afternoon. I'm just adjusting things here. I put a few things under my stand here for my phone, so it's a little bit more of a direct view of me rather than, that when you see people from up above. We're finding out on these Zoom calls and video chats and all that type of thing. Everyone is learning the technology that we have video-wise very quickly. So, as always, we'll just wait a couple of moments as people join us. Hopefully, I forgot to put a little reminder post that will be at 1 o'clock today, but it's not the first one, so I'm hoping people remember. And there you go. By the way, if some of you are wondering, there's a picture right there that I have on my wall. In case you're wondering what that is a picture of the chapel that we built at Wright State University while I was there doing campus ministry. And when I left a couple of years ago, they were kind enough to give me that portrait as a gift. My campus minister did that along with the rest of the community. I also have a little bit of artwork also next to it. I went to the Chicago Museum of Art, 6 or 7 years ago, probably no, closer to 8, and found some reprints of pieces that I liked. I have a few of those around my house, and like to have those. So I know we're also in these days when we're having all these video chats from people's homes, we're getting a view of what people's homes are like, and which is kind of interesting. You learn a lot about a person, I think, by going to their house and finding out about things like that. So I put up a lot of books and display those. That way people will think I've read them all and I'm really smart. Have I really read them? Well, who knows? Probably not. No, the answer is no. So anyway, we've got a few people with us today. Carol is here and Suzanne is here. Good to see you guys. Good to be with you. It's Sunday, so I dressed up again. You got to keep some semblance of normalcy in these times. There was a nice piece in the Cincinnati Enquirer. It's online, and it's also it was in the print edition. I'm not exactly sure when, within the last few days anyway, about people going to church, quote unquote, during this time of social distancing and all the like. And there was one of the people profiled was a man and wife by the name of Glenn and Laura Gigandi, who live over in Mason, I believe. And if I remember correctly, Glenn works over at St. Maximilian Kolbe Parish. Laura works for the Pregnancy Center East, and they have 4 wonderful children. I mention it because, and then there are several other families from other churches, but I mention that just because Glenn was a student of mine way when I was first at Wright State, so about 2006, 2007. He was there for about a year, and then he transferred to Franciscan University, Steubenville. But I just thought it's a small world. Nice to see Glenn and his family profile. And they're all dressed up, and they've got, the TV in the living room, and they've got their chairs, and they're standing during the appropriate times. It's just kind of a nice little view. So let's see. Get into a little bit of, just some announcements and things like that. If you didn't get to see the Pope's Urbi et Orbi, to the city and to the world blessing, and then he did benediction as part of that. That was Friday at 1 p.m. our time. It's up on the Vatican's website or YouTube channel. I'd go watch that. That was a really wonderful ceremony. It was a very stark, I don't know how to describe it. It was very poignant. Maybe that's the right word. Because he came up those steps in front of St. Peter Basilica. St. Peter Square was empty. It was getting dark. It was raining. He walks up by himself towards the stage they had set up, the platform, where he gave a short homily, which was really wonderful. Read that if you have the opportunity. That's well worth talking about and reflecting on. It was really just wonderful, very poignant. I don't really know how to describe it, but he. At the end, he does benediction, the blessing with the monstrance over the empty square, save for the police who are there at the end, blessing the whole world. I just was really very moved by that. So if you didn't watch that, go and watch that. It was really wonderful. So let's see. I'm getting a couple questions. Oh, Suzanne said, yeah, I mentioned Ascension Parish up in Kettering. Yes, the St. Mike's of Dayton. Yes, they are in the town of Kettering, which is a suburb of Dayton. And you had Father Ed Pratt probably for that live stream. I'm glad you watched that. There you go. And Carol says, your daughter and her family are their neighbors. Yeah, wonderful people. Glenn and Laura, just really wonderful people. I was very sorry to see Glenn go when he transferred, but he was going for good reasons, and it seems like it worked out really well for him. Nice young man and a nice family. So I'm glad to. It's a small world, isn't it? It's a very small world. Let's see. Brian has a new video this morning. That is up on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. If it's not on the YouTube channel, it will be shortly. I believe so anyway. It's certainly on the Facebook page because I saw it there. Let's see. Easter is in 2 weeks, which is really hard to believe. I barely know what day it is, much less to understand that Easter is in 2 weeks. But it is. Obviously, we will not be having flowers quite as we usually do. And people will generally make a small donation in memory of a loved one or family member. If you would still like to have a friend or family member remembered, we won't be doing a flower, but we will put their names in the Easter bulletin. So if you have a name you would like to have there, would you just email Kayleen at the parish? And she will take care of putting their names in the bulletin. Which is a good reminder that there is still a bulletin coming out every week. It's not printed. It's on our website and through our parish app. So make sure you look for that information on the parish website if you would like to receive those. Let's see. Also, because this was the fifth Sunday, there was would have been a St. Vincent de Paul collection. If you are able to give something for that, that would be very much appreciated. You can do that online on the parish website as well, or you can mail in a check to the parish as well. By the way, if you don't, you may not. I say that as though everyone knows what our mailing address is, and you might not. Most people probably don't have a whole lot of reason to mail things. That is on our website, but it is also 11144, so 11144 Spinner Avenue, and that's, of course, Cincinnati 45241. That's the mailing address for the parish. And then lastly, I'll just mention Joe Grody organized our 24-hour parish rosary, which is still ongoing, started last night about 6 o'clock and is going through this evening at 6 o'clock. And people have been mentioning on Facebook and through email that it was just a wonderful experience for them to do that, and very much that they felt that they were not alone in this prayer, knowing that other people were from the parish were specifically praying this along with them through these 24 hours. And I know many people throughout the world pray the rosary every day. It was very much a real experience of the communion of saints and how we are all one, united in one body of Christ. Such an important thing for us to remember, especially in these days of isolation and staying at home and quarantine and all that type of thing. So there are still, let's see, it's only 10 after 1. There are 5 more hours going on. So if you wanted to join in them today in that prayer, you might pray the rosary together as a family or on your own. It's a beautiful day to go sit outside, maybe in your backyard or something like that, and enjoy the weather. It's a little windy, but it's a typical spring day in Cincinnati, which is a glorious thing all on its own. So that might be some way to spend the day as well. All right. So let's look at the gospel for today. So today is the fifth Sunday of Lent. We're getting rapidly through the season. And today would be the third scrutiny for those who are preparing for baptism at Easter. And there are three special readings for those scrutinies. And we've been reading them this year because we are in that cycle of the lectionary. 2 weeks ago was the Gospel of the Samaritan woman at the well with the Lord. Last week was the recounting of the healing of the man born blind, the Lord restoring his sight. Today is also from John's Gospel. It's the story of the raising of Lazarus. And so I'm going to read this. I thought about doing the short version, but the short version, might fit better in a Facebook Live. Leaves out, I think, some interesting and important details. So I'm going to read the whole story, the whole recounting. And have a glass of water before I do it, because it is a little bit long. But so this is from John's Gospel. So let's just kind of think, to open our minds a little bit, clear our heads, and just be present to listen to this Gospel. So I'm going to take a moment of quiet just to allow us to do that, those of us who are watching live especially. But if you're watching this later on YouTube, I invite you, you could even just pause if you needed a few more moments that I'm going to give. Allison said, yes, please do the long version. We're not going anywhere. Isn't that true? So we have time, don't we? So let's just take a moment of quiet to listen and open our hearts to help us listen to God's word. So a reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Now a man was ill, Lazarus from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who had anointed the Lord with perfumed oil and dried his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was ill. So the sisters sent word to him saying, Master, the one whom you love is ill. So the sisters sent word to him saying, Master, the one you love is ill, When Jesus heard this, he said, This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. Then after this he said to his disciples, Let us go back to Judea. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just trying to stone you, and you want to go back there? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in a day? If one walks during the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks at night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. He said this, and then told them, Our friend Lazarus is asleep, but I am going to awaken him. So the disciples said to him, Master, if he is asleep, he will be saved. But Jesus was talking about his death. Well, they thought he meant ordinary sleep. So then Jesus said to them clearly, Lazarus has died, and I am glad for you that I was not there, that you may believe. Let us go to him. So Thomas, called Didymus, the twin, said to his fellow disciples, Let us also go to die with him. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, only about 2 miles away. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary and comforted them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary sat at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise. Martha said to him, I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, the one who is coming into the world." When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary secretly, saying, "The teacher is here and asking for you." As soon as she heard this, she rose quickly and went to him. For Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still where Martha had met him. So when the Jews who were with her in the house comforting her saw Mary get up quickly and go out, they followed her, presuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her weeping, he became perturbed and deeply troubled, and said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Sir, come and see." And Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so that this man would not have died?" So Jesus, perturbed again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him, "Lord, by now there will be a stench. He has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd here I have said this, that they may believe that you sent me." And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, tied hand and foot with burial bands, and his face was wrapped in a cloth. So Jesus said to them, "Untie him and let him go." Now many of the Jews who had come to Mary and seen what he had done began to believe in him. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Oh, there's so much you could say on this gospel. If you follow Father James Martin on Facebook, he has a wonderful reflection today on this gospel, talking about the actual town of Bethany and the tomb of Lazarus that is there. It was very interesting. It's been a site of veneration for centuries, from very early times, from probably the 2nd or 3rd century, which speaks a bit of its authenticity. It's usually very difficult, almost always very difficult, to know for certain in the Holy Land if certain things happened in the place where it's said. But that gives pretty good witness if it goes back that long. And just really talking about Jesus' own personal reactions. You know, we have in here a couple of those emotions pointed out. First, that Jesus was perturbed. It says that twice. And it's a Greek word that means that he was really angry. I mean, upset, mystified, just really upset at what was going on, greatly saddened, and then that he wept. And if I remember correctly, because I don't speak Greek, and I wish I knew biblical Greek, but I don't. But that the verb means really, really harsh crying. I think in our own day we would call it an ugly cry, one of those where you're tears running down your face, you have to blow your nose, all that, just really ugly crying. This is how Jesus felt. I mean, he was truly, truly upset to the deepest part of his being at what had happened to Lazarus. Because as the gospel relates, these were good friends of his. And they were, personal friends. These are probably people Jesus had known for many years. That Mary was the one who had come to him, admitting her sins and who wept herself, and those tears enough to wash the Lord's feet. So Jesus knows these people well, and so it's a personal loss for him. And he is, compassionate towards Martha and Mary on the loss of their brother. So as we hear all of that, I think then we can see, especially in the Gospel of John, which very much focuses on the divinity of Christ, we very much see here the very human aspect of Jesus. Jesus both human and divine completely. We see the human part here in his love and compassion, his grief for his friends. But then, of course, we're also going to see his glory. We're also going to see his divinity. One of the commentaries that I was reading talks about how very often when Jesus does something, works a great miracle like this, it's kind of explained afterwards. That was the case in the recounting of the man born blind. Afterwards, it's kind of explained what Jesus does. But in this instance, in this episode, it's really explained in the middle. Because obviously, for him to talk to Lazarus afterwards would be anticlimactic in terms of writing a gospel. But it comes when Jesus almost reaches Bethany. Martha goes out to meet him, and she said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." So she's expressing faith, especially faith in God and her faith in Jesus. And whether it's a fully formed faith, knowing that he's both human and divine, that he's truly the Son of God, not quite sure, or is he just a great prophet? And I want to pause for a moment to say, isn't Martha's view, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died"? It's a view that many of us have had. Lord, where are you? If you were here, would this be happening? Would that be happening? Whatever sufferings we have endured in life, don't we often say to God, "Well, where are you? If you were really here, really loving as I expect you to be, this wouldn't have happened." And but that's not quite how it works. That's not how God has done things. So Jesus says to her, "Your brother will rise." So he's trying to remind her of the faith that perhaps they had talked about and he had taught her about. And Martha relates her general feeling, which was common among some Jews of the day, that "I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." There was a view among some that there would be a general resurrection of the just at the end of time. But Jesus says to her, and here's the key statement, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die." So let's unpack that line there just a little bit. I am. This is the name that God offers to Moses. When Moses says at the burning, "What's your name? Who should I say to the people?" And he says, "I am." So Jesus is identifying himself with the great I am. So he's making a statement of who he is. And then saying, "I am the resurrection and the life." He is that resurrection. The resurrection is part of his very he is the Word of God, which has come into the world. And he is the world's resurrection. He is the world's life. And then Martha gives this really wonderful response. And she calls him Lord. "Yes, Lord, I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world." I mean, what a wonderful statement. Very similar to what Peter says to Jesus, that I believe that you are the Son of the living God. It's also interesting this is a woman making the statement and being related in the Gospels. I mean, it's a very patriarchal world that we're reading about. Women had very little to do with public life. And so the fact that John has made them such central characters and that he has her say this is significant. And she says, I have come to believe. I think that's important for us too. I have come to believe. If your faith isn't perfect, if you don't understand everything, if there are times when you doubt, I don't think that's the end of the world. I think that's very natural and normal. We all have that. It's part of being human. But the response in faith to that, in a sense, is to remain open. To remain open to listening for the ways in which God is present in our world and present in our lives. Ways in which God is present even in our suffering. And I think that's a lot. Sometimes we think of suffering as the absence of God. But God indeed is with us. In suffering, in loneliness, in fear, and anxiety, God is always there with us. And it remains then for us to, and it's not easy. I mean, I say that it's not easy. I'm certainly not perfect with it. But it remains for us to strive to see, even in those moments, that God is there. And it's truly where faith is necessary. I don't think we need as much faith when things are good and everything's happy. Yes, God, here's God. I have all these wonderful things. It's much harder when things are not good. But that's when we need to pray even more and ask God for that faith, ask God for that help to see where is he present, even in the midst of suffering, pain, anxiety, loss, whatever it may be. The other thing I want to point out, so in the scene at the grave, Jesus goes to the grave, and I think there are some really very real realities that are mentioned here, in that they go to the tomb. We've already heard that Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. Jesus says, open the tomb. Martha says, reminding him, he's been dead for 4 days. And this is a day before funeral homes and such, in which we have been able to sanitize death. It was still very real to these people. And she goes, Lord, there's going to be a stench. And so obviously her faith, she's still trying to understand. And who wouldn't? I don't know that I'd be as far along as she was. But he says, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? And she kind of, I guess, backs away to say, yes, Lord, you did. I'll be quiet now. And so he prays to the Father, which is, a wonderful insight into the nature of our triune God, this self-communication, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And he calls Lazarus to come out. And it notes here, he was tied hand and foot with burial bands, his face covered with a cloth. So the practice in that culture was that when a person died, body would be washed, and then it would be tied. The feet would be tied, the hands would be tied, the mouth would be tied shut, and then the face covered with a cloth, and then the body laid in the tomb. Those bands, while showing some of the burial practices of the ancient Near East, which is in and of itself interesting in an archaeological manner, I guess, are also, I think, symbolic. They are symbolic of the ways that death binds us in so many ways, even in this present life. Even when we have been baptized into Christ's death so that we might share in his resurrection, we are meant to share in that even now. It's not just, someday when we die, we have hope of going to heaven. As wonderful as that is, as tremendous, unspeakable a gift, indescribable a gift as that is, there are still things about the culture of death that bind us today. Things like addiction, things like fear, things like habits that are hard to break. Things, our own thinking, the human thinking that we are in charge and that we are really an entity unto ourselves. I hope this is making sense. So many things that bind us, the things of the world, as I think Scripture would say, the pursuit of the goods of the earth, money, goods, power, fame, whatever it might be. Those things bind us, quite literally. We can't see it, but I think it's very much there. I think we see it in broken relationships, broken people. We see it in so many ways in our lives. Perhaps as we enter these final 2 weeks of Lent, it might be good for us to reflect for a bit. What are the particular things which bind us, which prevent us from truly living a full, joyous life as children of God, and living that life in communion with children of God all around us, our families, our friends, colleagues, co-workers, people in general? What are the things that bind? And that's hard to think about. It's not easy. Part of the thing that binds us, in general, we human beings, is the thought that no, there's nothing like that binds me. I'm my own person. I'm completely self-sufficient. Are you now? No. Things to think about. So I pray that this will be a good source of reflection for you. This is one of those. This is a section of the gospel that is rich in depth and meaning, and I'd really encourage you just to go back and pray with it. Read it slowly. Read it section by section. Pause over it. Ponder it. Turn it over in your mind and in your heart and in prayer. Read it again. This type of holy reading, Lectio Divina, would be, I think, very fruitful in these days. Yes. Okay. Hope all that makes sense. Let's see. So it's getting 1:35 almost here. Lest I go on for too long. So as we get towards the end of towards the end of Lent, just keep up with us here on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. There are a lot of resources in so many places for forms of prayer these days. I noticed in my own prayer, the last couple of weeks, obviously I'm at home mostly, and so I've been doing a number of things work-wise. I've still had more time. I think most of us have had that. And I kind of was thinking to myself, why is it? It's still hard to pray. I mean, it was still the same thing along, when life is normal and you've got a million things going on. Maybe some of you can relate. It's sometimes hard to pray. Why is it still hard to pray? And last night I said evening prayer, and I was like, I'm praying a little bit better. And when I prayed morning prayer this morning in Mass, it was the same thing. Which points out, I think, something very important, that so many people, I think, they relate to me that it's hard to pray. They find it hard to pray, and that happens not just here at St. Michael, but everywhere I've been, and I think throughout the people of God. It points out that I think we need time and space to really pray, I think, especially any type of a contemplative, truly being with God, allowing God's presence to fill us and allowing ourselves, being in a place where we can sense that a bit. And I thought, it's been 2 weeks. That's probably about a good time to kind of allow yourself to settle. This is why some retreats, when a person goes on a retreat, it's several days long. If you go on an Ignatian 8-day retreat, part of the reason it's 8 days long is because you need at least a couple of days just to rest, catch up on your sleep, for instance. And so I just relate that to you to encourage you, allow yourself that space. This might be one of the few, I hope actually, the times that we get this much space and this much enforced space to slow down a little bit. Not all of us can slow down. Those of you in healthcare, different things, or if you're in an essential industry or you work for Kroger's, things like that, you're not slowing down, but others of us are. Can we allow ourselves that space and perhaps give ourselves that opportunity and that permission to slow down a little bit? Allow ourselves to pray. Just a thought. I was going to say something else. I wanted to say a number of people have been reaching out on Facebook and friending me, as they call it, and a lot of people from the parish. Prior to this, I had not accepted but maybe 2 or 3 friend requests from parishioners, and not because I don't want to be friendly, but because I just think the whole notion of friending on Facebook is a little strange. Because I would know my students, especially at Wright State, not all of them, but a lot of young people, they're very concerned with how many friends they have on Facebook. Oh, I've got 900 friends. I've got 1,000 friends. And you don't know half of them. So there's that. I just thought I'll relate to people, thank you, in real life. These days, though, I have accepted many more of them. Many more of them have been coming in, and I've accepted them. So what I want to say with that is that is my personal Facebook page. You're welcome on it, and, there's nothing there, I don't think, that I don't post that much or anything like that. There's nothing there that I'm embarrassed of or anything. However, I do occasionally express opinions that are just my own. They're just Ed Burns. They're not Father Ed Burns, pastor. They're just Ed Burns. And occasionally I post things. It might be political. It might be something else. I want you to know that should you start reading down my Facebook page and you see something, or if in the next, from here on out, I post something and you're like, wait, what? What is he say? I can't believe a priest would say that. That's my personal page. Those of you who know me and have gotten to know me a little bit I think you're aware that I'm a person, I have opinions. And I'm not always successful in keeping them under wraps. So I just want you to know, occasionally you might see something that you're like, oh, that's strange for a priest. It's mostly my personal page. A lot of it is, I catch up with a lot of my college friends. And just remember that since something is there on a friend post, it doesn't mean I necessarily agree with it. It just shows up. So just, if there's something that you're truly like, gah, feel free to reach out to me and email me and say, hey, could you help me with this a little bit? And I'd be glad to do that. That's no problem. I'll probably actually post even less than I normally do, just to, be safe. But it's there, and we all have different opinions. And, I don't, for instance, especially in politics in our country, this whole Democrat-Republican divide that we often have, just so you know, I don't tend to think quite the same way as most people do. So just, that's a caveat for the day. I think many of us can relate, Facebook as a means of communication is great for things like this, but it also leaves out a lot of the elements of human communication. Human communication is a complicated, there are a lot of parts to human communication. I mean, for instance, just very briefly, there's what I actually say, the words that I'm saying, but then you've got tone, you've got facial expressions, things like that. Which all go into helping person understand meaning. In something like a Facebook post, you get next to nothing of that. So you're only getting a very small part of the communication process. So there you go. Kelly Janney going, you have opinions? She didn't. Yes, she knows very well. I've argued with her husband on many, many things. She knows that well. There you go. All right. So, look, it's a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining. It's a little bit windy. Be careful of that if you venture out. But take care of yourselves. And let's see, tomorrow is Monday. So 4 o'clock tomorrow. I'm hoping, by the way, over the next week or two, to have some guest people giving some of their own reflections and talking about a couple of things. So as I set that up this week, occasionally you might see someone else here. And I think that might be a nice little bit of variety for folks and give me a little bit of space to think too and to have a little bit of free time as well. Michelle says we can go fly a kite. Boy, you can certainly fly a kite today. It might even be too much to do that. All right, but anyway, however you celebrate the day and enjoy the weather, flying a kite, taking a walk, whatever it might be, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take some time for prayer today. I think that's it. All right, God love all of you. Have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.